All right. Thank you guys. Thank you everybody. Welcome to another episode of Technically Human. We have a very exciting episode today with one of our very own customer advisory board members, Tim Whitacre. Before we do that, I want to introduce myself. I'm David Cho, the co-founder of Staat and the host of Technically Human. This is Tim Whitacre. I'll let you introduce yourself, Tim.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Yeah, my name's Tim. I am an engineering manager at a nonprofit called New Story Charity. We're based here in Atlanta, Georgia, and we have an office in San Francisco as well. And we work to end global homelessness, specifically focused in Mexico right now.
Awesome. Can you tell the people a little bit more about what it is you actually do or what the company does? Because I think when I first heard about New Story, I was blown away at the work you guys are doing. So I think people would love to hear more.
Yeah, sure. So we our biggest effort is to pioneer solutions to end global homelessness.
Mm-hmm.
So we are as much of a tech company as a nonprofit. Our goal is to figure out what solutions we can use that will maximize our efforts and maximize any donations that we get to the fight against homelessness. Our company we also have a 100% model, meaning that 100% of every dollar donated goes directly to the work we do. And then our overhead, like our salaries and travel and things like that, are funded by a group of really generous donors. So
it's awesome. Very similar to the charity water model, right?
Correct. Yep.
Yeah.
Awesome. Yep. We're good friends with those guys.
Oh, that's great. Yeah, it makes total sense. And I mean, as much as I'd love to talk more about New Story, what we're here to talk about today is actually really, a topic that comes up a lot more often than you think, and that's one-on-ones. And Tim has a pretty unique approach to one-on-ones with his team at New Story. And so, Tim, I'd love to hear from you about, what it is how you approach one-on-ones and what advice you might be able to give to our audience.
Yeah. I think the first thing I'll start off by saying is we definitely have a one-on-one structure, like a pre-COVID and a post-COVID one-on-one structure. Before COVID, when we were still in the office, I think our goal was to have them every other week,
Right.
or every other third week, something like that.
Yeah.
And oftentimes they ended up being like, hey, let's go walk to the coffee shop and grab coffee, which I think is good sometimes, but it lacked a structure, and it lacked something where we could like have anchor points in the conversation that we could come back to in the future. And so when our team went fully remote, about a year ago, we realized pretty quickly that we needed to have a better structure. And so we actually started doing weekly one-on-ones. And we tried a few different formats, but the current format that we landed on is essentially, I think they're scheduled for about 30 to 45 minutes. Some of the people on my team, it takes 30 minutes. Some take more like 45. And we spend the first bit just kind of catching up. We'll do something like red, yellow, green, or some other sort of really simple format of just basically like, how are you? How's life? How's work? How are your goals? It could be as simple as, I slept terrible last night because my kid was up all night or something. And then from there, we'll kind of dive into looking at, what are some things you wanted to accomplish last week? How did you do? It's less like a stand-up or a check-in and more of just a conversation. But we found that they've been really beneficial to both the team and myself as a manager.
Right.
And then the last part of it, we have a section where it's kind of like a transparency section where the team member can, we have a list of like potential topics, but they could talk about anything from, career growth to goal to raises to really anything that they want. We make sure that we have a section. I would say that section probably gets filled in and talked about maybe like once every 2 months, but we make sure we have like a dedicated time for that in our structure.
How many people are you managing right now, roughly?
Right now I'm managing 3. So we have a pretty small team on the engineering side. Yeah. But we're hiring for 2 more. So.
And so, can you talk a little bit about kind of the structure before COVID and the structure after? Like, how did you guys think about one-on-ones, and what place did they have in your workflow, and in the overall career progression, and it being a little more informal? What was the impact of that versus the more formalized approach now?
Yeah, I think the informal side of it was it definitely there was definitely it was nice sometimes because like I said, we would, we work in an area where we could go for a nice walk outside, go to the
Hmm.
coffee shop. But it often sometimes you'd realize you'd spend the entire time talking about a show you watched the night before or something going on in each person's life, which
Mm,
is not always a bad thing. And sometimes
yeah,
that still does happen in our new format.
right.
The difference is that having a structure in place means that both sides, the manager and the direct support, they actually know that they have time on a calendar to speak into the things that they
Mm,
want to know, want to have
hmm.
answers to. So
Yeah.
I think that was the biggest shift that made things better. Also, consistency is good. So I think at one point in time, it was, especially early on when I moved into management role at News Story, it would be a thing where I would kind of just look at the calendar and be like, oh, I haven't had a one-on-one with so and so in a few weeks now.
Hmm.
I would Slack them and say, want to go grab coffee, and that would kind
Yeah.
of check the box, which
Right.
is definitely not the right way
Yeah.
to do it. So
So how are you kind of like managing all of the inputs? I'm sure a lot of people are saying things that you need to capture and record and keep on file. Do you have like any system or preferred method there?
as far as so as far as managing or like capturing the info, like the conversation,
Hmm.
the one of the ways we do it is every team member, both on my team and then company wide, they will fill out a kind of a standard templated doc
Hmm.
every like the end of their week on a Friday.
Oh,
So I
wow.
do my one-on-ones on Monday,
Got it.
which allows me to kind of set the stage for the week.
That's smart.
And so then the team, they fill out their document, which should only take them about maybe 10 minutes at the most. But they fill it out by
Hmm.
the end of the day Friday, which means they kind of like reflect on their week, look forward a little bit to the next week, and then so that way we can always go back and look and see. So for instance, if there was ever an employee who was really struggling, I would be able to go back and look and see like, okay, did they accomplish their goals every week? No,
Hmm.
no, no. But that's all. It would be a lot of work to go back and do that,
Yeah.
So we're still
Right.
we're still figuring that out. But yeah,
Yeah.
that's how we
That
do it now.
I think that's a huge part of it. I think, in my time being managed, I remember having very similar one-on-ones. We would do, what was it? Start, stop, continue. So I think very similar to green,
Yeah.
yellow, red. And it would be such a mess for me because I would, sometimes I would write notes on a piece of paper or write it on my computer or whatever I had in front of me, and I would just completely lose track of what what I was supposed to do, or like, the totality of progress, which I think is really interesting because you have to take these kind of moments, these minutiae, these weekly check-ins, and basically create a narrative around a person's progress cumulatively, holistically. Do you have any kind of advice on that? Because that is a really daunting task, I would say.
So on like the page that they document their weeks on, we also do have their quarterly goals are on there,
Mm,
and we use OKRs. And one of the ways that we track that is how like your percentage complete towards a goal. So we try to make sure our OKRs are very that they have some trackable metric to them, like
sure.
from something as simple as launching 3 new features on a product to more complex of like having 80% of support tickets closed within 24 hours. So then we can go and look up that information and we can track the progress towards the goal.
Right.
So I think that with the weekly dialogue has really helped a little bit,
Hmm.
or helped a lot actually.
Yeah.
Yeah, one thing we did recently started doing is we've added in basically like a larger personal growth metric, which is
Mm,
our OKRs are quarterly,
hmm.
the conversation piece is weekly, But then this personal growth thing it could be 6 months, it could be a year, it could be 5 years. It's kind of like, if I said, David, what is your goal in, the next, like, what is your goal at the company? And if you said, oh, I want to be a senior manager, I want to be a lead principal architect, it's like,
Hmm.
okay, now we have a goal that we're working towards.
Right.
Let's continue to talk about this every few weeks, every few months, and like see like what are the steps that you need to continue to work on in order to go
Mm.
there. Some of those, it could just be time, like you have to be at the company so
Yeah.
long, but it also would be like, if your goal is to be a lead mobile developer and you were only touching mobile a few times a week, that could be a problem, right? So
Mm. No, those are great points. I think, one thing I'm interested to hear is like, I think you touched on it a little bit before, but I think a lot of managers might be drawn to the informality of like check-ins that are just kind of like walk and talks or coffee chats or whatever, because it takes the pressure off, right?
mhm.
And at the same time build some level of, I think, trust, and like it doesn't feel like this corporate structured thing that is kind of another one of my manager's tasks that I have to partake in or participate in. How do you maintain like that level of camaraderie, or like just that level of informality and trust and transparency that maybe was more apparent in the former version of the one-on-ones?
Yeah, that's a great question. Quick side story. When I first started in tech back in the 2007, 2008, the company I worked for had a ping pong table.
Mhm.
And every couple of days, our manager would walk through and just be like, let's go have a ping pong meeting. And then
Oh
you'd
wow.
go out and you'd play ping pong and you'd talk. And that would be like your growth set, your personal growth conversation, which was sometimes great, but sometimes also hard
Right.
to, Yeah, so I think one of the ways that because when we started talking, we went remote, we had that conversation of how do we have something a little bit more formalized to really make sure we understand how the team is, but also
Mm-hmm.
keep the level of personal connection there.
Mm-hmm.
And that's why when we set up the structure of our meeting, we actually call our meetings CATs, CATs. And so C
Hmm.
stands for connection. And so the first part of the meeting, which could be 5 minutes for some team members, could be 30 minutes for others, is really about connection. Like, how are you
Mm.
doing as a person? This is less about, did you meet your goals? Did you do
Mm.
that? It's more of like, how are you doing? And so we make sure we carve out time for that. And that's the first thing we do. And then A stands for accountability. And that's where you talk about goals. And then T, like I mentioned earlier, is transparency, where you can talk about
Gotcha.
your future progress and things like that.
Wow, that's really
Um,
helpful. And is that something that, did you say that you recently used cats as a framework, or is that?
yeah, we started that, I would say probably in May of 2020 of last year. We, shortly into like work from home pandemic life, we had tried to like mash up some formulas that we had found all over the place, and we
Mm-hmm.
realized that we needed to create our own, and so that was kind of where we landed, and we've been doing that for almost a year now.
Wow, I love that. That's really helpful, actually. I think most people are doing ats, and then missing that first C there.
Yeah, yeah,
No, that's really good. No, yeah, this has been amazing. Is there anything else that I think something that we kind of want to hear more about is how first time managers should approach these scenarios, because I think like a lot of folks aren't trained. They're just kind of put
yeah.
into a manager role from an IC perspective, and kind of left to their own devices. So I'd love to hear from you, like, any mistakes you made along the way as it relates to one-on-ones, or stories you can share for our first time managers out there.
Yeah, I think, one of some piece of feedback that I got really only about a year and a half ago was that as a manager, one of your key roles is to advocate for your team, is to
Mm,
advocate for what they need, whether it's a personal growth thing or even something as simple as like, you know, somebody needs a new computer or a new mouse or keyboard.
mm,
And so I realized very quickly that like, okay, somebody needs a new mouse, like that's a conversation, right? But if somebody is struggling, or if somebody is not doing their best work, there is most likely a reason behind it. It's not that they hate their job. I mean, let's hope it's not that they hate their job. It's that maybe something is going on in their personal life, or something is going on where they are feeling like, maybe imposter syndrome at work. And so I think
Oh,
keeping the connection piece open, and just being very, very empathetic to the fact that, people's 9 to 5 is not their whole world. I think that really changed everything for me.
wow.
Yeah, we've had people that have struggled, especially when they were so used to coming to a vibrant office every
Mm,
day, and now, for a long time they're forced to work from home.
right.
So we really had to make sure that, we really dialed up the empathy in that
Mm.
time. And I think that's what saved a lot of us. So
No, that's really good. Yeah, I think that's a really hard lesson to learn, is like where you start your assumptions in conversations. Do you start
yeah,
them from a place of, like you said, oh, this person hates their job or they're incompetent, that's why they're doing X, Y, and Z, versus a completely different unrelated factor. So I think that is incredible advice. Yeah, this has been an awesome time. I think our listeners are really gonna appreciate your insights and have a lot to think about and take away. So
yeah,
thank you so
totally.
much, Tim.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Awesome. Thank you so much, listeners, for tuning in to another episode of Technically Human. Please check out Tim. I'll link out his LinkedIn and other relevant links out there. Please check out News Story. They are doing incredible work. So, yeah, thank you guys so much. Tune in next week. All right, we'll see you. Bye.